deported from American soil. The move is part of a growing trend of third country migration partnerships. But what does it mean for Rwanda, for Africa, and for global migration governance? To help us make sense of it and attempt to answer these questions, we're joined by Professor Loren Landau from the University of the Witwatersrand, that's based here in Johannesburg, South Africa, a leading voice on migration policy and founding director of the African Center for Migration and Society. Professor Landau, thank you for joining us. How are you on this Wednesday?
Good morning. Everything is good for me. Thank you.
Thank you for making time. Let's start with your overall impression. What do you make of this deal between Rwanda and the United States?
I think we could see this as part of a broader effort by the United States and, of course, European countries to export people they don't want to the African continent and elsewhere in the world. We've seen it with South Sudan. We've seen it now with Eswatini next door. Now we're seeing it with Rwanda. This follows a pattern, of course, of these countries dumping things they don't like, whether it's waste or other kind of materials on Africa, products, and now dumping people. And so from a human rights perspective, of course, this is a terrible thing. What I think we also see at play here is a kind of global politics in which Rwanda, particularly very cleverly, is ingratiating itself precisely with the people who have criticized its role in Africa before, winning support, winning favor, winning moral authority with Europe, with the United States.
Why do you think Rwanda is positioning itself this way in global migration politics? They have made similar agreements before, as you say, with the UK and even Israel.
Yes, and also Denmark. The UK agreement has now fallen away, has been criticized from a human rights perspective. But I think if you look at what Paul Kagame has done over the last 30 years, really, since the genocide, he's rebuilt Rwanda. Absolutely, it's a prosperous country by African standards. But he's also been accused of meddling in the war in Congo, of human rights abuses at home. And even from his East African colleagues, there's been skepticism about his more autocratic approach. But many of those critiques have come from countries that are now finding him useful. And so those critiques now go away. The opportunity for him is possibly to continue to export or extract minerals from the Congo, to continue his more authoritarian modes of government without the kind of critiques or trade sanctions that he might have gotten from the European Union or from the United States before.
As you say, from a human rights perspective, this is not a great move, and there are concerns that have been raised on that. So what are the key human rights issues that come to mind to you about this deal?
Well, I think if we look at the quality of prisons in Rwanda for their own citizens, for Rwandese who are there have been accusations about human rights abuses, about inability to access legal representation, about general living conditions. There's no reason to think that people coming from outside will get anything better. Even worse, they will be far away from not only their own families, colleagues, but any kind of human rights organizations. Rwanda doesn't allow a kind of free and active civil society like you might see in South Africa or elsewhere. So these people will basically be put in isolation, not literally on an island, not literally on an Alcatraz, but effectively away from the kind of protections and any sort of observation that is necessary to take care of and protect the rights of prisoners, but also people who would have been deported.
Generally, what does this deal say about Africa's emerging role in global migration management? Is there a shift that we're seeing?
Yeah, I think what we've seen is that African leaders, I won't say Africans generally or Africa generally, have recognized that migration management is a resource. So much like mineral exports or security, in which the leaders have traded the welfare of their own citizens for personal gain, for political power, we're now seeing migration being used in that way as a tool in which African leaders can reinforce their power, protect themselves from external critique, and reinforce their kind of control of the citizenry at home.
Do you think this opens the door for other African countries to follow suit and open their borders to take on similar roles, or is Rwanda a special case? We've mentioned South Sudan and Eswatini as examples.
Right. I mean, I know that what we saw a few weeks ago was a summit of smaller West African countries in the White House meeting with the United States. The European Union is trying to negotiate similar deals. They already have these deals with Libya or some version of the Libyan government. They've done similar deals with Tunisia. So it's not that this opens the door, this maybe pushes that door open even wider.
What are some of the clear benefits for Rwanda in this type of a deal?
Well, I think the first benefit is obviously they are being paid, whether it's going straight to the government or will go to private security or whoever is running these facilities, they're getting paid. They're being paid in cash. They're going to get better trading options with the United States, perhaps with the European Union, out of these deals. But I think the bigger benefit is really that it immunizes, at least in part, Paul Kagame and his government from external critique, from sanctions for what they might be doing in Congo or elsewhere, from sanctions or pressure for what they're doing on the human rights record at home.
Eswatini, with that example, there were concerns that the immigrants that were brought into the country from the US were criminals. What kind of due diligence should be put in place then to make sure that those fears are allayed and criminals are not being added on to an already struggling system like Rwanda?
Right. It's very difficult to know exactly how these people will be selected from the United States. Even 250, while that is an important number, is a very small number of the people that the United States hopes to deport and is already deporting. So it's unclear to me how these people will be selected, who these 5 people sent to Eswatini, for example, who they were, what crimes they committed. It is up to, of course, the Rwandan government to decide whether they accept these individuals or not. We don't know all of the terms of those deals, but clearly the main issue here should be that whoever African countries take, we should be ensuring that their rights are protected, that the people who are around them are made secure, and that there is due process that enables these people, if they have been convicted of a crime, to serve their sentences and then go home or be free. And right now, it seems that these people might be being sent into a kind of interminable detention in a country where they have no support. And that, I think, is the big human rights concern.
Should the African Union step in terms of these deals, and what role could they be playing in other regional bodies when these kinds of agreements are made?
Right. The African Union should have stepped in a long time ago. Regional bodies, the East African Community, and in the Rwanda's case, SADC, in the case of Eswatini, should be speaking out against these, not just from a moral ground, but also from issues of political accountability and human rights. Unfortunately, the EU and the United States have undermined these kind of multilateral organizations by making bilateral deals with Rwanda, with Libya, with any other number of countries. And the EU, or rather the AU and others, have been left a little bit powerless. So while they continue to push for free movement across Africa, an African passport, greater kinds of integration, external powers have made these kind of deals which are strengthening borders and really kind of undermining the kind of moral principles on which African migration management should be built.
Professor Landau, we appreciate your time and your enlightenment on this topic. Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Great. Professor Loren Landau from the University of the Witwatersrand, that's based here in Johannesburg, South Africa. He's a leading expert on migration and governance, helping us unpack the implications of Rwanda's agreement with the United States to take in migrants deported from American soil.
Es-tu préoccupé par quelque chose? Es-tu passionné par les questions